So welcome to class Conversational Hypnosis Skills 101, Getting Unstuck. So in the class tonight, we're covering how our language directs, informs, redirects our brain at the conscious level, but also the effects of that on our unconscious mind. And many of us recognize there's kind of a disconnect between what we consciously say we want to do and how we actually follow through. And we're going to be talking about that disconnect and how to bridge that gap so that when we pick and choose the goals that we want to accomplish or the things that we want to do, or even how we want to be and showing up in life, that we can minimize the difference between that we can arrive at showing up, being, doing, saying who we want to be in the world. So these skills, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, or whether you're just a friend or showing up with your family members, you'll find these tools so useful in not only recognizing where people's blocks are, but also how to use some subtleties of language to start shifting these places where we feel stuck. And of course, harnessing them for your own mind. So we're going to get started here. Go ahead and take a blank sheet of paper. You can have lines on it. It can be clear, whatever. A pen, and I want you to go ahead and write down the things that you want to achieve. What do you want for yourself within 3 to 6 months? Go ahead and just take a moment and brainstorm. Think of any of those goals. Welcome. We have more people joining us, Mary Lou. And go ahead and just write them down on that paper. And kind of think about 3 to 6 months. You know, we're moving into the holiday season, whether it's just getting through the holidays, feeling sane through the holidays, whatever the things that you're wanting for yourself within that window of time. And just write them down on that blank sheet of paper. And so the first principle, and this is a really powerful principle, but I'm going to share it in the form of a story. So this reminds me of back when I was a whitewater rafting guide. I worked in the rivers of Oregon, and I was working on the Deschutes River. Now, the Deschutes River, it gets quite a bit of traffic, and we were on a 3-day camping trip, river trip. So in this 3-day trip, we had all of our boats packed with all of our camping gear, our stove, our food for the 3 days, right? And we kind of break the boats up into a couple of different things. So there's the people boats, and that was me with my group, and our people would paddle through the water. And then there was some gear boats, about 2 gear boats, 4 total. And so we're going down, and the second day on the river is the big rapid. And it's White Horse Rapid. Now, this is a class 4 rapid. For those of you who are river goers, you know what a class 4 rapid means. But those of you who are kind of new to this, let me just give you some background. So a class 1 rapid is moving water, but no real movement. It's really almost very calm water, but it has some current to it. So that's class 1. Class 2 is riffs and giggles. So there's a little bit of current. It's moving a little bit. You can see some little waves on the water going down, but there's not any major obstacles. And it's easy to navigate. It's easy to there might be some, rocks to move through, but it's pretty easy to navigate. Now, a class 3 rapid this is where your guides are actually taking bets about they can pop off your boat, because it's easy to pick you up at the end, and it's a safe river. Even if you're falling in, it's easy to pick you up, right? So, but a class 4 is a white knuckler. Like white knuckler, you're holding onto the paddle, and it's a little bit scary, a little bit terrifying even, but a white knuckler, because you better know what you're doing. If people fall out of the boat, they could get hurt. And often in a class 4, these are where the guides don't want anybody popping out of the boat. The goal is to keep everybody safe in the boat through the course, right? This is a class 4 rapid. Now, class 5 is really intense. Commercially, very few places run a class 5. And then class 6 is like certain doom, that's not even runnable considered. So we're going down, it's day 2. We come up to the big rapid. This is White Horse Rapid. And this is a fun, exciting river, but White Horse Rapid, that's the white knuckler. Now, as guides, our job is to park the boats, and there's a little overlook. So we park the boats and we walk with the clients up to this overlook. And from this overlook, we can see the motion of the river. We can see how the water is moving. So when there's more water in the river, the obstacles change, the eddies change. How water moves around the rocks changes. So we're getting a feel for how that's looking for the day, getting a sense of the play of the river. And you can kind of picture this in your mind. Now, right in the middle of White Horse Rapid is a big fat rock. It's huge. This rock is like this big triangle jutting out of the river. Now, as guides, we had a different name for it, but let's call it Oshmack Rock. So Oshmack Rock is right there in the middle of the river, and we're all picking our way through. Or, visually, we're looking for that line, because if you get too close to the rock, you could pin your boat, and you don't want that. If you get too far, you're going to end up in the eddy, and you're going to have a hard time getting out. So we're picking the line. Oh, this line is current as it moves here is perfect. And then you want to just pop it into that one current and swing it around, it'll be golden. So we're kind of talking about this, and we're pointing it out to the clients because, educating them on the river, and we're heading back to our boats. And now our fearless leader, Martin, he'd been on that river 9 years, probably run this rapid 50 times, maybe even 100 times. He knew this water. He knew it like the back of his hand, right? We're heading back to the boats. And what I hear under his breath, I hear Martin muttering, "I'm not going to hit the rock. I'm not going to hit the rock. I'm not going to hit the rock." Like, we're laughing, right? We all get it. Don't hit the rock. That's the goal of this river, of this rapid. Just don't hit the rock. So we're heading back to our boats. I've got a people boat. Martin has the gear boat. He's our fearless leader. So he pulls out and he takes off around the corner. Now, you can't see what's around the corner, but what do we hear? Oh, schmack. We're like, oh no, Martin, everybody jump in the boat. And we're paddling our people down. As we come around that corner, there's Martin with all of our gear kind of floating in the water. Sandwiches are like rolling by. We pull out our boats and start gathering all of the stuff. And I'm like, Martin, what happened? He's like, I don't know. I knew it was coming, but I ended up just smacking right into the rock. So we picked up the gear and dried everything out, and of course, headed back down the river. So everything turned out okay. But this story illustrates a key principle. Kind of think, what is that key principle? Now, again, Martin, he knew this river. He'd been on it countless times. He had run it so many times. He'd even run it, the White Horse section. He'd even go run it for fun on the weekend, even when he wasn't working. He knew this river, but by the language he used, by the words that he used, it caused his unconscious mind to override the goal. The goal was don't hit the rock, right? So this key principle is making sure that the words that you use are in the positive. As you look back at your goals, what you want to create for yourself in this next 3 to 6 months, pay attention. Are they stated in the positive? So here's kind of part of that disconnect that we talked about earlier between what we consciously focus on and what our unconscious mind is doing. So Martin, at the conscious level, he knows what the word don't means, right? But what do you picture in your mind when you hear the phrase, don't hit the rock? Don't hit the rock. Your mind is actually picturing hitting the rock. And part of this is because don't doesn't translate in mental pictures. So when we say a phrase, we understand it at the conscious level, but our unconscious mind especially has to translate the words that we use into mental pictures. And those mental pictures actually speak directly to our unconscious mind. It's part of the unconscious language, part of the language of the mind. So this can be a pretty simple level principle, but I'm so amazed at how oftentimes I'll get clients that come into my office and they're actually telling themselves the very thing that they don't want. I had one client wear a shirt into my office. He had come in for anxiety and his shirt says, "Don't panic." So every time he's looking at himself in the mirror, he's giving his mind, "Don't panic," but his unconscious mind is getting that message, panic, panic. What are the times that I've panicked? And it's sorting through that, right? So as you look at those goals that you're wanting to create for yourself, are they stated in the positive? So I want to dial this in just a little bit more because we all get the word don't. You might have even heard this principle, other places as well. But don't doesn't translate to the unconscious mind. So for instance, if we say, don't think of a yellow butterfly, because as you do, it's going to turn blue and fly right out the door. What does your mind do? It actually pictures the very thing that you tell it not to do. Don't doesn't translate into those mental pictures. In fact, our mind has to pull your language and create mental pictures of it in order to understand it. And those mental pictures speak directly to your unconscious mind. So when we say something like, "I'm not going to eat sugar anymore," what is your mind actually picturing? This is a big one. I work with weight loss and stop smoking clients. "I'm not going to eat sugar anymore." What does your mind picture? Sugar. It actually hyper focuses your unconscious mind to notice sugar, recognize sugar, identify sugar. Sugar, sugar, where's the sugar? Here's another one, pretty common. "I want to stop yelling at my kids." What does your mind picture? It pictures those instances where you lost your cool and you were yelling at your kids, right? And so that hyper alerts your unconscious mind and your reticular activating system to notice those times that you yelled at your kids or did the very thing that you didn't want to do. And so as you're focusing on that, your unconscious mind is actually starting to create even more of that. So it's a very simple principle, but it can be so powerful. And also it redirects the mind to what we actually want to be experiencing or doing instead. So for instance, if I say, "I want to lose weight," very common in the client base that I work with, you might think about what's the effect of those words on how you think and feel about weight loss or how you think and feel about your body. "I want to lose." Is there anything that you've lost that you felt really good about? "I want to lose weight. And the unconscious mind is actually sorting for the multiple uses of words at the same time. Another way to think of the unconscious mind is like a highly compact supercomputer. It's able to process large amounts of information very quickly. So when we talk about weight, we understand in terms of like body weight, but it's also weight is in the times of waiting at a stoplight. So wait. And so we're getting kind of a double message in that phrasing. So an even better message, and I'll just use it because this one's pretty common and pretty universal, is instead of saying something like, "I want to stop yelling at my kids," what is the positive mental picture you want to be creating instead? Anyone want to chime in? So it might be something like, "I am being patient and collected with my kids. I am taking a moment to breathe when I get frustrated. I am gathering, taking care of my stress and emotional state so I can show up and be positive and clear with my kids." Whatever it is. So go ahead to your list. Let's go ahead and try the breakout rooms for a moment. And I want you to share maybe one or two of your goals and the original way that you might have phrased it, and then how you would shift that positive languaging into making it more, I call it brain friendly, to giving your mind the positive mental pictures that you want it to be doing. And so this is one way you can start working with not only your own mind, but also when you're hearing other people, you can help them phrase it in those positive ways. So let's give this a shot. Breakout rooms. I'm going to put you guys in breakout rooms. We'll probably do 2 each. So just say hi and share, have one person start, share a goal, what it might have been phrased like before, and then how you're focusing it into a positive language, but especially creating a positive mental picture to cue your unconscious mind. Okay, so we have a couple in the chat. I've been working on this positive language switch for a while, and I've already phrased my goals in the desired one. Handstand for 1 minute. So great, that's very specific and clear, right? And what's good about that too is you know when you'll be successful. For instance, taking the first goal, I want to improve writing in English. It's kind of vague in that you may not know when that level of success, when you have that. Even if you improve a little bit though, then you'll still be on track with that. And back to the second one, the second point, system for home management and homeschool routine. So having a positive routine. My goal was to achieve a healthy state of mobility, restated. I'm hiking pristine areas of natural wonder. Love it. And notice how that imagery really cues in positive feelings. When you think about being in pristine nature, how do you think and feel about that as a goal, as a focus of what you're headed toward? It's very positive. It's enticing, right? Enticing to move forward. Okay. And Elizabeth says, but I added the words peaceful and simple to my desire for a system after hearing you talk about making a positive mental picture, because those words help create a more vivid picture. Perfect, Karen. That's great. Oh, I like that picture, Karen. Okay, great. So hopefully you're getting kind of the sense of this. And sometimes how we're talking to ourselves can do the same thing. In fact, so even this phrase, and I'll share it because it's really common. There's kind of a couple common ones. So one is, I want to lose 30 pounds. I hear that quite often. I want to lose 30 pounds. How does your mind think and feel to that? Or here's another one that sounds positive, but has a little bit of negativity attached to it. I want to get out of debt. And how does your mind kind of respond to that word debt? How the thoughts and the feelings respond to that? It's kind of the heaviness, right? So how might you switch, even though it doesn't have a don't in it, there's still, as you're paying attention to the thoughts and feelings of that, there's still like a heaviness to it or a stuckness to it. So I might rephrase it, and I am generating extra income. How does your mind think and feel differently about extra income versus I want to get out of debt? All right, so these are common ways that we kind of talk to ourselves or how we think about things. And the more enticing and those positive messaging that we can give our automatic mind, the more motion we kind of create at a deeper level to get ourselves on board with what we want. Great. So have some fun with that. That's principle one. Now, another thing to mention here is that we are hardwired for stories. And that's why I share stories, whether it's with my clients or on calls and classes like this, because we will remember a story much better than just hearing a principle, right? Or before most everybody showed up, I shared like a story of one of my first experiences of riding a bicycle. You know, you can see the parked car ahead of you, but you're struggling to get that coordination and balance. And I just quite couldn't turn in time and just smacked right into the back end of that car. So as you think about story, now story one, we're hardwired to remember story. I think it goes back to our ancestors sitting around the fire and just telling stories over and over, because if you didn't have electricity and you only had a campfire, you're going to hang out and you don't have TV, you're going to hang out and tell stories. We learn from stories. But even more importantly, our unconscious mind, it's the language of the unconscious mind is story. And much of the language of the unconscious mind is similar to what you experience when you dream at night. You have scenes in your mind, stories in your mind, in your dreams, and your mind, actually that language, story, imagery, metaphor, symbolism, those mental pictures speak directly to your unconscious mind. So if you have something or want someone to make a change at a deeper automatic unconscious level, then using one of these methods will take that message in, that principle in even deeper. So here's a good place to take a moment to talk about the layers of the mind and how they kind of interact. So a good example I like to use, you might have heard of this, is the image of an iceberg. If you imagine an iceberg, an image, then you can see the top part above the water. It's a much smaller portion. It's only about 10% above the water. And that's kind of like our conscious brain. So we're thinking about, we're reasoning and logic in our language. And that's often where we're setting our goals. I want to get out of debt. I want to create extra income or whatever that goal is. But then think of the unconscious mind as all of the stuff, that iceberg, the 90% below the surface that we don't see. And that 90% below the surface is actually what's driving that iceberg. And so when we're making the goals at the conscious level, I want to do X, Y, Z, our unconscious mind sometimes doesn't get the message. Or sometimes we're phrasing the goal in a way that our unconscious mind isn't hearing it. And that's how I mentioned those examples. I want to like stop yelling at my kids, or I don't want to eat sugar anymore, right? So that's key principle one. Make sure that the words that you use to direct your mind have those positive mental images attached to it to create the extra momentum and focus, and actually tunes your unconscious mind into those results you want to be creating for yourself. Okay, so here's the second principle. And you're going to hear this out in the world. You might also hear this in how you talk to yourself. And there's three words that I want you to start watching out for. So these three words, the first one is but. So when we think about the word but, B-U-T, it's a conjunction. It kind of connects a first part of a sentence with a second part of a sentence. And there's some ways that we use it that are maybe not so helpful. So I'm going to share kind of these three principles, and I want you to kind of play with that, how they work, and start kind of rephrasing some of those places you might be using these words. So the first one is but. We're going to talk about that here in a moment. The second is can't, and the third one is try. So watching out for these three words. And there's a lot of ways that we use them that are not helpful. So the first word, let's talk about but. A but joins two sentences together, but it has an interesting effect. But actually negates or dismisses everything before the word but. It has the effect of redirecting the mind. So here's one way you might have heard it used. I love you, but you need to clean your room, right? So when we hear that, the mind is, I love you, is positive. The but kind of negates or dismisses that first part and says you need to clean your room. I want to give another example, like I sped to the class, but I still didn't get there on time, right? So the first part is the action, and then but is kind of negating the action, and then we have the second part. So there might be some ways that you're using the word but that is kind of tripping up the focus that you actually want the person to have. Now there's some positive ways of using but. I'm going to share a couple of those. I hear you say it's challenging, but I believe in you. So notice, what's the effect of but in that phrase? I hear you say it's challenging, but I believe in you. So we're hearing the person and often like recognizing where they are in their own process can be very validating. And then the but adds an extra redirect into more empowerment. I hear it's challenging, and then we're going to redirect, but I believe in you. I hope that makes sense there. And then another phrasing is, I hear you're feeling discouraged, but look at the progress you've made. And notice, what's the effect of the mind with that phrase? I hear you're feeling discouraged, but look at the progress you made. So it's kind of dismissing the first part. So one, it's kind of validating because people want to be heard. We want our emotional state recognized, or the words that we're saying recognized, but then it redirects the mind to a more empowered state. Look at all the progress you've made, right? So start paying attention. Where are you seeing, hearing those words like but in your own day-to-day with your friends, with your family, and how you're using the word but? Is it negating, dismissing maybe the first part of that sentence? And are you redirecting the mind in a way that you want it to? I work really hard, but I still can't pay off that debt, right? So maybe that's some of the ways that we, use that phrase around that. We're dismissing our work, and debt becomes bigger because we're like redirecting the mind to debt. So if you refocus that phrasing, I know I can work hard. Here's one way to kind of replace but, and this is pretty golden for almost anything, is to use the word and instead of but, because and doesn't dismiss the first part, and just links them together. I love you, and I need you to clean your room. Or I love you, and I know you can get through this. I hear that you're struggling, and you've made a lot of progress. You can do this, right? So notice how the effect is a little different. Now, here's the second one that I want you to pay attention to, is the word can't. Sometimes we throw this word around in ways that we're not really paying attention to it. Can't. Cannot, it's a conjunction, it's a contraction. So cannot, and we're shortening it to can't. But what's the effect of the word can't? It actually means powerless, right? There might even be a feeling of stuckness with it, or kind of a feeling of, can't move forward, stuck, right? And what are the ways that we might be using it? I can't get everything done. Actually, this is one belief system that I hear clients say, especially if they have like anxiety, or they have this need to get everything done, this like high need to achieve, but they, even though they're, high performers, they still feel this anxiety or this sense of failure just because they can't get everything on their list done, right? So consciously, it doesn't make sense, but the unconscious mind is kind of running that a little bit too. If we're giving our mind the sense that we're powerless, or we're not arriving, we're not able to, then we're keeping ourselves stuck. And we don't want to give those messages to our mind. So I can't get everything done. I hear that quite a bit from clients. I just can't eat healthy. Well, it's not that you're not able. So start replacing can't with choose. I just can't eat healthy. I am choosing unhealthy foods. So that's more empowering, because part of that is the word can't is kind of controlled outside of ourselves. But the word choose is recognizing our ability and our power. So just making aware of how these words are affecting how you feel and how you show up in those situations. So I recommend using that word, I'm choosing this. instead of I can't. I can't eat healthy. I am choosing unhealthy foods. And then you recognize your responsibility in that rather than someone else is blocking you, right? And then I can't talk to my spouse. Well, it's not that you can't talk to your spouse. Difficulties with communication. And so you're choosing not to talk to your spouse. Yeah. There's a comment in the chat. I love I am choosing. So I am choosing is so much more empowering than some of the ways that we're using language that way. And it can work for so many things. In fact, there was actually a research study where they had participants who were trying to do weight loss. And these participants were into a couple of groups. In one group, they both had the same plan. Two groups, one, they had the same plan. And one group, they were just going to replace, I am choosing to eat healthy instead of I can't eat, I can't eat certain foods, because we kind of do those restrictions on ourselves. Well, they followed these people for like 6 months and then checked in. The percentage of people, the group that were using just the words, I am choosing to eat healthy, had a much higher continuation of positive result than the people who didn't have that languaging. So I am choosing can be very empowering. Okay, now the third one to pay attention to is try. So the word try, we use it in ways that we're not really thinking about, but it actually kind of has this implied failure. In fact, in the immortal words of Yoda, do or do not, there is no try, right? Because if we try something, then it kind of implies we failed. I tried to ride the bike, but I fell down. Or try to pick up the pen. If you pick it up, then you've done it. You haven't tried, right? So try actually implies failure. So here's one way we might want to start changing it out. Now, sometimes we're using try in terms of sample, or we're using it in ways that we don't really want to do something, but we don't want to tell the person no. So we're saying, I'm going to try to make it to the party. But really in the back of our mind, we're not committed. We really don't want to make it. We just don't want to tell the person we don't want to go. So instead of saying, I'm going to try to make it when we don't really mean it, what if you just said, I have other plans, or I have many things, many priorities, and my schedule doesn't allow for that. Or I just have other plans. People don't really need an explanation if we don't want to go, right? And we can say that without being negative to the other person. So kind of paying attention to those three words. How are you using them? Where are they showing up? And especially we hear some of those can't messages when people talk about their goals or how they might feel stuck in life. Some of these words are going to come up. Some of the buts, the can'ts, the try. So, and also that's, as you pay attention to those words, I want you to start paying attention to the effect on your mental emotional system. Because as we use these words kind of without thinking about them, they're still kind of having those subtle effects, even at kind of that energy or motivational level at our unconscious mind. And I like to think of the unconscious mind, right? All of the stuff, the 90% below the surface. I like to think of it as the automatic mind, because it's in charge of whatever is running automatically. So the more that we can make the messaging about what we intend, what we want, what we're creating, if we can make it more clear for the automatic mind, we can get more of that energy of our 90% of ourselves on board with the 10% of where we're directing or focusing. Okay, so now this last one is really fun. I'm going to share this third tool with you. So I also like to share this in a story. This last one is to pay attention to universal language. So this comes from a client story. We're going to call her Elise. She had been divorced like 3 years before she came in to see me. And she wanted to start dating again, but she just found herself hesitating, apprehensive. she'd say she wanted to, find someone to date, but kind of was more like her heart wasn't in it, or she just felt she was really holding back, but she wanted to find somebody to connect with and have a relationship with. So as we were starting to talk about this, I was hearing some of her mental blocks coming out. Relationships are hard, but as we dialed it in even more, she started saying things like, I always pick the wrong guy. Or she said, you can't really trust men. They say one thing and then they're actually doing something different. Now, this story, I'm picking on men, but it goes the same way for men and their relationship ideas about women, right? And so the mind, because of our experience, the mind kind of collects these examples. And then it starts to, especially if they kind of have some repetition, it starts to build a belief system around our experiences. And so when you start hearing people say, like, these universal language, these are red flags that they are stuck in these ways. And then there's a couple ways I'm going to share with you that these things work. So here's some of the universal language she says. I always pick the wrong kind of guy. And when we dialed it in even further, she says, men are liars. We started hearing some of this language at the automatic level. Men are liars, men are cheaters, you can't trust men, right? So if at the conscious level, she wants to date, but at the unconscious level, her unconscious mind, automatic mind, is holding on to these ideas. You can't trust men, men are cheaters, men are liars. Oh, but love is wonderful. How much is she actually going to be open to connecting with someone? Now, here's the other sneaky way that these belief systems work. They actually cue your unconscious mind and they create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if our mind is saying men are liars and men are cheaters, well, is it all men? No. But if your unconscious mind is looking for the men that are liars and the men that are cheaters, then it starts highlighting those men, and those men becomes the ones that you notice that stand out for you. So those men that are liars and cheaters then becomes the pool from which you choose, and then you have a similar experience. And then, see, I told you, we can't trust men, right? But think about, here's like another way that it can show up. We have mental blocks about everything. And then these are belief systems, those limiting beliefs. You might have heard of the limiting beliefs from Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this, and how these belief systems are actually controlling our life in these self-fulfilling prophecies. So if I have an idea, a belief, no one wants to talk to me. Do you hear the universal language in that? My mind is saying this, nobody wants to talk to me. And then I go to a party, think about how would my body language be showing up if that were my mental block? I'd be kind of withdrawn, might hold back. I wouldn't really be excited to meet people, right? It comes across in your physiology, in your body language. And so maybe I'm not putting myself out there, really excited. And then by the end of the night, I maybe only talk to a couple of people, and then my mind reinforces. See, nobody wanted to really talk to you. Well, because your energy wasn't open and expressive and connected, right? So if we can identify and clear these limiting beliefs, these are places that we can really free up that energy and get our mind on board with those things that we want. So here's one way, it's like listen for those and recognize that universal language. Now, here, I love this. This is a one-word reframe. So when you hear somebody saying things like always, never, especially, are those red flags. So one word that can kind of start shifting that. I always pick the wrong guys. Always? Or, yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I had a friend say, Holly, you're happy all the time. Now, do I really want the pressure of having to be happy all the time? So sometimes I'm happy. You're so lucky. Sometimes I'm lucky. And then it kind of takes the edge off of that universal belief system. So instead of it being universal, it just kind of breaks it up a little bit. Okay. And so for this example of Elise with dating again, is we recognize, oh, men are liars, men are cheaters. Well, some are. And that's true, right? But maybe those aren't the ones that we want to be choosing. So some men are liars. Okay, that's pretty fair. But we want to redirect the mind to what we want to focus on. Some men are liars, but I am choosing positive, supportive people. Some men are cheaters, but I am choosing men who are ethical, honest, heartfelt, right? I am choosing people who are more sincere. So now we've kind of meshed a couple of the skills together. So I want you to kind of think about where are the places in your life and maybe even around some of the goals that you've defined or identified, where might you recognize some of that universal language? So they sound like the rules of life, these mental blocks, but if it's not true for everyone, then it's not a universal truth. It's not like gravity. We all are subject to gravity, right? So if it's not a universal, it's just an idea that got stuck. But it's these ideas that are stuck on repeat, especially at the unconscious level, that are actually influencing our life and creating the reoccurring patterns that we see and that we recognize. For instance, as Elise said, I always pick the wrong guys. Okay. What is the unconscious mind doing at the deeper level that you're choosing the wrong guys? Oh, men are cheaters, men are liars. Well, is it all men? No, some men. So that helps to start break up that languaging about how we see men or women, like not to pick on men here, but just men or women, because it can go either way. So that one word reframe, sometimes, or some men are, some women are, some relationships, think about this, pretty common. Relationships are really hard. Some relationships are, but some are really amazing. Some relationships, it's hard to communicate or hard to talk to some people, but some people are really heartfelt and open and caring. So now can you hear some of the redirects? With so we're acknowledging what the person is saying, but by using the word some or sometimes, we're kind of breaking it up from that all-encompassing language to recognizing it is more truthful. Not everybody is honest, ethical, and sincere, but many people are, aren't they? And you're hearing how I'm using the word but in there. And you could even use, if you're hearing some of this universal language with someone, you can also help the mind build a new belief to kind of reroute that negative idea that's keeping them stuck. So I hear that you've had experience with men being cheaters, and some men are, but as you think about all of the heartfelt, ethical, honest men that you've known and experienced and connected with, you'll start to recognize more and more that there are ethical, honest, and heartfelt men out there that you can connect with. What's the effect of that phrase? We're using a redirect. You know, as you've had this experience, we're kind of validating you've had this experience, and it's true, some are. So now we're kind of minimizing, getting out of the universal language into, yeah, some people out there are that. But, and now we're shifting the focus and even kind of minimizing the first part. But as you think about, and now the second part of the sentence, we're actually building a belief, a new belief to replace it. As you think about all of the wonderful, kind, caring men that you've known, you'll start to recognize that there are men out there that are heartfelt, sincere, and caring, right? So then that can become more of their experience. But also this phrase then starts cueing the unconscious mind to notice the heartfelt, kind, caring, ethical men more and more, which then become the ones that you start noticing more. And then that becomes more of your experience, and that builds a new belief. So how do we have these beliefs? And this is, you know, those of you that follow Joe Dispenza recognize the limiting belief, the language of that. I call them mental blocks. As you recognize the mental blocks that are keeping people stuck, it's how we think about things that's keeping us stuck. And if those thoughts are on automatic, that tells us it's kind of wired into the unconscious or automatic mind. But we can start using language to creating more motion with that messaging, how we're talking to ourselves, and also the effect of these words on our mind and our automatic self. Okay, so how do you get people unstuck? We've covered quite a few. Well, we've covered like 3 solid techniques. So the first is positive languaging. So sometimes just languaging it into more positive can get us some extra motion or movement. The second is watching out for those words, but, try, and my third one, can't especially, right? So pay attention to how those are showing up for you, or who around you is showing up. Is it that you can't stop smoking, or is it that you are choosing to smoke? Yeah, and it might feel compulsive, but as we put it into a choice, now it cues the mind differently. And this is, some of the languaging about addiction is very much disempowered language. Oh, you're addicted. You just can't do that. You're addicted. And now it becomes even bigger. So don't get me started about that rabbit hole. So many like medical languaging is very disempowering for people. So, but we can start changing it up by the words that we use, by how we're redirecting the mind. And then that last one is to recognize, especially where people are using those red flags, that universal language, that especially are those places that we can start adjusting, taking it out of the universal language and into sometimes it is that way. But as you notice the positive, supportive people, you'll experience that more and more. And you'll recognize and identify and connect with those people more and more. Okay, I hope this gave you some tools to start utilizing and working with. I am doing a class that is the next 3 Wednesdays, just like we did tonight, about an hour, 6:30 to 7:30, give you some actionable tools to start working with. If you want to join us for that, I'll be sending out everyone who's registered here tonight. I'll be sending you out a direct link plus a code that you can get the class. So if you go to my main website, you'll find the class. It's $90. But for those who showed up tonight, I'm going to be sending out a code for 50% off. So if you just, when you go to register, I'll send you a direct link. If you want to go a deeper dive into these tools and skills of understanding how to be effective with language, working with the unconscious mind, no trance necessary, then you'll want to join us for this class. I love this stuff and it's so much fun. And you'll find you can just use it all the time. Oh, thank you, Karen. It's very insightful. I'm going to pull the mute off. If you have background sound, you can go ahead and mute yourself. But let's go ahead and unmute everybody and just check in. And okay, finding the things here. Here we go. We're going to, oops. Yeah, just go ahead and take yourselves off of mute. Ask to unmute. So I'm going to go through the list here. Okay, great. And if you want to just share, if you can take yourself off mute, if you'd like to share, what you kind of noticed, what you thought was useful that you're going to work with this coming week. So as you're out and about in the world, talking to people, or even talking to yourself, what are you going to pay attention to and focus your mind to start recognizing and noticing? And we'll start with Mohammed because you're off mute. So go ahead.
No,
okay.
Like,
okay, there you go. Go ahead. Oh, you just muted, went back on mute. Okay. So a couple of you, Marianne or Catherine, would you like to share? You can share either something that was insightful or like an aha, or what you want to be paying attention to in this next week.
Yeah, this is Catherine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you, Catherine.
The aha for me, and I know this to be true, is how you talk to yourself, just having that choice. Because I've noticed that in myself, that when I put it in terms of it being my choice, it's just like, wow, so much more powerful. So I've been, so I think I'm gonna pay more attention to that. How I talk to myself, that, it's a choice. So that's something that, I've been kind of noticing just on my own, but so this just kind of validates, it just seems like when I oh, I'm going to choose it was like the body automatically gets up and goes. Like, so it's like that, very automatic. So anyway.
And another good one along those lines is prioritizing. I am prioritizing, because then that also cues our unconscious mind to focus on those priorities. I am prioritizing taking care of my body. I am prioritizing, relaxation, or feeling focused, or feeling clear. That's another way to kind of utilize that system too. Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for sharing, Catherine. I'll be concentrating on the universal language, red flag words, always and never. Turning into my choice establishes that I am in the driver's seat. Yes, wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Very informative. Thanks. Thanks, Mohammed. Marianne, the word but, remove that and replace with and. Great. And anyone else like to share? Trevin or Karen? Okay, so that's a wrap for tonight. I'll go ahead and send out a follow-up email with a little more details if you want to read more about it. But if you go for the class, don't sign up on my main website. Use the code and I'll send you a special link for that if you want to join us for a deeper dive into how language affects our unconscious mind and how it can help get more momentum in your life towards your goals, and also how you can start helping other people get unstuck just by shifting some of the language. So we're going to be going through in this deeper dive class, we're going to be going through some essential coaching skills. So when you've worked with a coach, it can be helpful in staying clear and focused about what you're moving toward, but also really kind of that sounding board, how we talk, and tells about how some of these, how we're really thinking and feeling about something. And I call it the thought, feeling, action cycle. So the words that we use affect how we think about it, or even how we're thinking about it affects the words that we use, right? And so it's our thoughts, our feelings, and our action then create our actions. So however we're feeling is part of a result of the thoughts that we're thinking about. And if we want to get that boost in motivation or focus, we want to get our thoughts and our feelings on board so we can take those steps and take the action forward. Oh, great. Okay, thank you, Mohammed. All right, so you guys have some fun things to work with. I'll be sending out those special links and just paying attention to. Now, one just quick comment on building beliefs. So if we look at the unconscious mind, the unconscious, I call it automatic mind, it's really driving from the beliefs, the reoccurring patterns that run our lives. So the more aware we can be of what those patterns are, the more clear we can be in building that momentum toward what we want rather than toward what we don't want. So we're going to be focusing in on that in a deeper dive, even more in the upcoming class in the next week. So if you're interested in moving forward with us and with the group, just let me know. And I have some other students that'll be joining us as well from the hypnosis class. So thanks for attending live, you guys. Thank you so much for coming to live to kind of do this little play shop to learn about the layers of the unconscious mind and how we can tap in and affect it even more. All right, we'll see you next time. Have a good night, everybody. And you can message me, Holly, at thebraintrainerllc.com if you have any questions.